The Crown Temple by Michael Edward of the Ecclesiastic Commonwealth Community (ECC). The Templars of the Crown. The governmental and judicial systems within the United States of America, at both federal and local state levels, is owned by the Crown, which is a private foreign power. Before jumping to conclusions about the Queen of England or the royal families of Britain owning the USA, this is a different crown and is fully exposed and explained below. We are specifically referencing the established Templar Church, known for centuries by the world as the Crown. From this point on, we will also refer to the Crown as the Crown Temple or Crown Templar, all three being synonymous. First, a little historical background. The Temple Church was built by the Knights Templar in two parts, the round and the chancel. The round church was consecrated in 1185 and modeled after the circular Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. The chancel was built in 1240. The Temple Church serves both the inner and middle temples, see below, and is located between Fleet Street and Victoria Embankment at the Thames River. Its grounds also house the Crown offices at Crown Office Row. This Temple Church is outside any canonical jurisdiction. The master of the temple is appointed and takes his place by sealed, non-public patent, without induction or institution. All licensed bar attorneys, attorneys, see definitions below, in the U.S. owe their allegiance and give their solemn oath in pledge to the Crown Temple, realizing this or not. This is simply due to the fact that all bar associations throughout the world are signatories and franchises to the International Bar Association located at the Inns of Court at Crown Temple, which are physically located at Chancery Lane behind Fleet Street in London. Although they vehemently deny it, all bar associations in the U.S., such as the American Bar Association, the Florida Bar, or California Bar Association, are franchises to the Crown. The Inns of Court, see below, the four Inns of Court to the Crown Temple use the banking and judicial system of the City of London, a sovereign and independent territory which is not a part of Great Britain, just as Washington City, as D.C. was called in the 1800s, is not a part of the North American states, nor is it a state, to defraud, coerce, and manipulate the American people. These Fleet Street bankers and lawyers are committing crimes in America under the guise and color of law, see definitions for legal and lawful below. They are known collectively as the Crown. Their lawyers are actually Templar bar attorneys, not lawyers. The present Queen of England is not the Crown, as we have all been led to believe. Rather, it is the bankers and attorneys who are the actual Crown or Crown Temple. The monarch aristocrats of England have not been ruling sovereigns since the reign of King John, circa 1215. All royal sovereignty of the old British Crown since that time has passed to the Crown Temple in Chancery. The USA is not the free and sovereign nation that our federal government tells us it is. If this were true, we would not be dictated to by the Crown Temple through its bankers and attorneys. The USA is controlled and manipulated by this private foreign power, and our unlawful federal U.S. government is their pawnbroker. The bankers and bar attorneys in the USA are a franchise in oath and allegiance to the Crown at Chancery, the Crown Temple Church and its chancel located at Chancery Lane, a manipulative body of elite bankers and attorneys from the independent City of London who violate the law in America by imposing fraudulent legal, but totally unlawful, contracts on the American people. The banks rule the Temple Church and the attorneys carry out their orders by controlling their victims' judiciary. Since the first chancel of the Temple Church was built by the Knights Templar, this is not a new ruling system by any means. The chancel, or chancery, of the Crown Inner Temple Court was where King John was, in January 1215, when the English barons demanded that he confirm the rights enshrined in the Magna Carta. This City of London Temple was the headquarters of the Templar Knights in Great Britain, where order and rule were first made, which became known as Code. Remember all these terms, such as Crown, Temple, Templar, Knight, Chancel, Chancery, Court, Code, Order and Rule as we tie together their origins with the present American Temple Bar system of thievery by equity, Chancery, contracts. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and of all uncleanness. Matthew chapter 23 verse 27. By what authority has the Crown usurped the natural sovereignty of the American people? Is it acceptable that the U.S. Supreme Court decides constitutional issues in the USA? How can it be considered in any manner as being constitutional when this same Supreme Court is appointed by, not elected, and paid by the federal U.S. government? As you will soon see, the land called North America belongs to the Crown Temple. The legal system, judiciary, of the USA is controlled by the Crown Temple from the independent and sovereign City of London. The private Federal Reserve System, which issues fiat U.S. Federal Reserve notes, is financially owned and controlled by the Crown from Switzerland, the home and legal origin for the charters of the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, and most importantly, the Bank of International Settlements. Even Hitler respected his crown bankers by not bombing Switzerland. The Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland controls all the central banks of the G7 nations. He who controls the gold rules the world. Definitions you never knew. A turn Anglo-French a turner to transfer allegiance of a tenant to another lord, from Old French a torner to turn to, arrange, from a to plus torner to turn, to agree to be the tenant of a new landlord or owner of the same property. Merriam-Webster's Dictionary of Law 1996. A torn, v.i.l., ad and torno. In the feudal law, to turn, or transfer homage and service from one lord to another. This is the act of feudatories, vassals or tenants, upon the alienation of the estate. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Esquire, N.L., scutum, a shield, gr, a hide, of which shields were anciently made, a shield-bearer or armor-bearer, scutifer, an attendant on a knight. Hence in modern times, a title of dignity next in degree below a knight. In England, this title is given to the younger sons of noblemen, to officers of the king's courts and of the household, to councillors at law, justices of the peace, while in commission, sheriffs, and other gentlemen. In the United States, the title is given to public officers of all degrees, from governors down to justices and attorneys. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Rule, N. L. Regula, from rego, to govern, that is, to stretch, strain or make straight. 1. Government, sway, empire, control, supreme command or authority. 6. In monasteries, corporations or societies, a law or regulation to be observed by the society and its particular members. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Rule N. 1. C. A statement about what must or should be done, sin, a regulation. Regulation N. 1. C. A rule, statement about what can be done and what cannot. 2. U. The general condition of controlling any part of human life. Newberry House Dictionary 1999. Code N. 1. C. U. A way of hiding the true meaning of communications from all except those people who have the keys to understand it. 2. C. A written set of rules of behavior. 3. C. A formal group of principles or laws. V. Coded, coding, codes to put into code, sin, to encode. Encode V. 1 to change written material into secret symbols. Newberry House Dictionary 1999. Curtain N. O.E. Courtin, curtain, fr. Of courtine, curtine, f. courtine, ll. curtina, also, small court, small enclosure surrounded by walls, from courtus court. See court. 4a flag, an ensign, in contempt. O.B.'s. Shack. Behind the curtain, in concealment, in secret. -1913 Webster's Revised Unabridged Dictionary. Court, N. 3. A palace, the place of residence of a king or sovereign prince. 5. Persons who compose the retinue or council of a king or emperor. 9. The tabernacle had one court, the temple. 3. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Court N. 2. The place where a king or queen lives or meets others. The Newberry House Dictionary 1999. Templar, N. From the Temple, a house near the Thames, which originally belonged to the Knights Templars. The latter took their denomination from an apartment of the Palace of Baldwin II in Jerusalem, near the Temple. 1. A student of the law. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Temple, N. L. Templum. 1. A public edifice erected in honor of some deity. Among pagans, a building erected to some pretended deity, and in which the people assembled to worship. Originally, temples were open places, as the Stonehenge in England. 4. In England, the temples are 2 inns of court, thus called because anciently the dwellings of the Knights Templars. They are called the Inner and the Middle Temple. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Capital, N. 1. The Temple of Jupiter in Rome, and a fort or castle, on the Mons Capitolinus. In this, the Senate of Rome anciently assembled, and on the same place, is still the city hall or town house, where the conservators of the Romans hold their meetings. The same name was given to the principal temples of the Romans in their colonies. In, N. Hebrew, to dwell or to pitch a tent. 2. In England, a college of municipal or common law professors and students, formerly, the town house of a nobleman, bishop or other distinguished personage, in which he resided when he attended the court. Inns of court, colleges in which students of law reside and are instructed. The principal are the Inner Temple, the Middle Temple, Lincoln's Inn, and Gray's Inn. Inns of Chancery, colleges in which young students formerly began their law studies. These are now occupied chiefly by attorneys, solicitors, etc. Inner, a. From in, interior, farther inward than something else, as an inner chamber, the inner court of a temple or palace. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Crown, N. 4. Imperial or regal power or dominion, sovereignty. There is a power behind the crown greater than the crown itself. Junius. 19. A coin stamped with the image of a crown, hence, a denomination of money, as, the English crown. Crown land, land belonging to the crown, that is, to the sovereign. Crown law, the law which governs criminal prosecutions. Crown lawyer, one employed by the crown, as in criminal cases. V. T. 1. To cover, decorate, or invest with a crown, hence, to invest with royal dignity and power. -1913 Webster's Revised Unabridged Dictionary. Colony, N. 1. A company, i.e. legal corporation or body of people transplanted from their mother country to a remote province or country to cultivate and inhabit it, and remaining subject to the jurisdiction of the parent state, as the British colonies in America or the Indies, the Spanish colonies in South America. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. State, N. L. To stand, to be fixed. 1. Condition, the circumstances of a being or thing at any given time. These circumstances may be internal, constitutional or peculiar to the being, or they may have relation to other beings. 4. Estate, possession. See estate. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Estate, N. L. Status, from stow, to stand. The roots stb, std and stg have nearly the same signification, to set, to fix. It is probable that the L-stow is contracted from stad, as it forms steti. 1. In a general sense, fixedness, a fixed condition. 5. Fortune, possessions, property in general. 6. The general business or interest of government, hence, a political body, a commonwealth, a republic. But in this sense, we now use state. Estate, v. T. To settle as a fortune. 1. To establish. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. Patent, a. L. Patens, from patio, to open. 3. Appropriated by letters patent. 4. Apparent, conspicuous. Patent, N. A writing given by the proper authority and duly authenticated, granting a privilege to some person or persons. By patent, or letters patent, that is, open letters, the King of Great Britain grants lands, honors and franchises. Patent, v. T. To grant by patent. 1. To secure the exclusive right of a thing to a person. Lawful. In accordance with the law of the land, according to the law, permitted, sanctioned, or justified by law. Lawful properly implies a thing conformable to or enjoined by law. Legal, a thing in the form or after the manner of law or binding by law. A writ or warrant issuing from any court, under color of law, is a legal process however defective. A Dictionary of Law 1893. Legal. Latin legalis. Pertaining to the understanding, the exposition, the administration, the science and the practice of law, as, the legal profession, legal advice, legal blanks, newspaper. Implied or imputed in law. Opposed to actual. Legal looks more to the letter, and lawful to the spirit, of the law. Legal is more appropriate for conformity to positive rules of law, lawful for accord with ethical principle. Legal imports rather that the forms of law are observed, that the proceeding is correct in method, that rules prescribed have been obeyed, lawful that the right is actful in substance, that moral quality is secured. Legal is the antithesis of equitable, and the equivalent of constructive. 2 Abbott's Law Dict. 24, A Dictionary of Law 1893. Status in quo, status quo. L. State in which. The state in which anything is already. The phrase is also used retrospectively, as when, on a treaty of place, matters return to the status quo ante bellum, or are left in statu quo ante bellum, i.e., the state or, in the state before the war. -1913 Webster's Revised Unabridged Dictionary. The 4 Inns of Court to the Unholy Temple. Globally, all the legalistic scams promoted by the exclusive monopoly of the Temple Bar and their bar association franchises come from 4 inns or temples of court: the Inner Temple, the Middle Temple, Lincoln's Inn, and Gray's Inn. These inns, temples are exclusive and private country clubs, secret societies of world power in commerce. They are well established, some having been founded in the early 1200s. The Queen and Queen Mother of England are current members of both the Inner Temple and Middle Temple. Gray's Inn specializes in taxation legalities by rule and code for the Crown. Lincoln's Inn received its name from the 3rd Earl of Lincoln, circa 1300. Just like all U.S.-based franchise bar associations, none of the 4 inns of the Temple are incorporated. For a definite and purposeful reason, you can't make claim against a non-entity and a non-being. They are private societies without charters or statutes, and their so-called constitutions are based solely on custom and self-regulation. In other words, they exist as secret societies without a public front door unless you're a private member called to their bar. While the Inner Temple holds the legal system franchise by license to steal from Canada and Great Britain, it is the Middle Temple that has legal license to steal from America. This comes about directly via their bar association franchises to the Honorable Society of the Middle Temple through the Crown Temple. From the History of the Inn, Later Centuries, p.6, written by the Honorable Society of the Middle Temple, we can see a direct tie to the Bar Association franchises and its Crown signatories in America. Call to the bar or keeping terms in one of the 4 inns a prerequisite to call at King's Inns until late in the 19th century. In the 17th and 18th centuries, students came from the American colonies and from many of the West Indian islands. The inn's records would lead one to suppose that for a time there was hardly a young gentleman in Charleston who had not studied here. 5 of the signatories to the Declaration of Independence were Middle Templars, and notwithstanding it and its consequences, Americans continued to come here until the War of 1812. All Bar Association licensed attorneys must keep the terms of their oath to the Crown Temple in order to be accepted or called to bar at any of the King's Inns. Their oath, pledge, and terms of allegiance are made to the Crown Temple. It's a real eye-opener to know that the Middle Inn of the Crown Temple has publicly acknowledged there were at least 5 Templar bar attorneys, under solemn oath only to the Crown, who signed what was alleged to be an American Declaration of Independence. This simply means that both parties to the Declaration Agreement were of the same origin, the Crown Temple. In case you don't understand the importance of this, there is no international agreement or treaty that will ever be honored, or will ever have lawful effect, when the same party signs as both the first and second parties. It's merely a worthless piece of paper with no lawful authority when both sides to any agreement are actually the same. In reality, the American Declaration of Independence was nothing more than an internal memo of the Crown Temple made among its private members. By example, Alexander Hamilton was one of those numerous Crown Templars who was called to their bar. In 1774, he entered King's College in New York City, which was funded by members of the London King's Inns, now named Columbia University. In 1777, he became a personal aide and private secretary to George Washington during the American Revolution. In May of 1782, Hamilton began studying law in Albany, New York, and within 6 months had completed a 3-year course of studies, passed his examinations, and was admitted to the New York Bar. Of course, the New York Bar Association is a franchise of the Crown Temple through the Middle Inn. After a year's service in Congress during the 1782–1783 session, he settled down to legal practice in New York City as Alexander Hamilton, Esqr. In February of 1784, he wrote the charter for, and became a founding member of, the Bank of New York, the state's first bank. He secured a place on the New York delegation to the Federal Convention of 1787 at Philadelphia. In a 5-hour speech on June 18, he stated an executive for life will be an elective monarch. When all his anti-federalist New York colleagues withdrew from the convention in protest, he alone signed the Constitution for the United States of America, representing New York State, one of the legal Crown states, colonies. One should particularly notice that a lawful state is made up of the people, but a state is a legal entity of the Crown, a Crown colony. This is an example of the deceptive ways the Crown Temple, Middle Templars, have taken control of America since the beginning of our settlements. Later, as President Washington's U.S. Treasury Secretary, Hamilton alone laid the foundation of the first federal U.S. central bank, secured credit loans through Crown banks in France and the Netherlands, and increased the power of the federal government over the hoodwinked nation-states of the Union. Hamilton had never made a secret of the fact that he admired the government and fiscal policies of Great Britain. Americans were fooled into believing that the legal Crown colonies comprising New England were independent nation-states, but they never were nor are today. They were and still are colonies of the Crown Temple, through letters patent and charters, who have no legal authority to be independent from the rule and order of the Crown Temple. A legal state is a Crown Temple colony. Neither the American people nor the Queen of Britain own America. The Crown Temple owns America through the deception of those who have sworn their allegiance by oath to the Middle Templar bar. The Crown bankers and their Middle Templar attorneys rule America through unlawful contracts, unlawful taxes, and contract documents of false equity through debt deceit, all strictly enforced by their completely unlawful, but legal, orders, rules and codes of the Crown Temple courts, our so-called judiciary in America. This is because the Crown Temple holds the land titles and estate deeds to all of North America. The biggest lie is what the Crown and its agents refer to as the rule of law. In reality, it is not about law at all, but solely about the Crown rule of all nations. For example, just read what President Bush stated on November 13, 2001, regarding the rule of law. Our countries are embarked on a new relationship for the 21st century, founded on a commitment to the values of democracy, the free market, and the rule of law. Joint statement by President George W. Bush and President Vladimir V. Putin on November 13, 2001, spoken from the White House, Washington, D.C. What happened in 1776? Whoever owns the soil, owns all the way to the heavens and to the depths of the earth. Old Latin maxim and Roman expression. 1776 is the year that will truly live in infamy for all Americans. It is the year that the Crown colonies became legal Crown states. The Declaration of Independence was a legal, not lawful, document. It was signed on both sides by representatives of the Crown Temple. Legally, it announced the status quo of the Crown colonies to that of the new legal name called states as direct possessive estates of the Crown. See the definitions above to understand the legal trickery that was done. The American people were hoodwinked into thinking they were declaring lawful independence from the Crown. Proof that the colonies are still in Crown possession is the use of the word state to signify a legal estate of possession. Had this been a document of and by the people, both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution would have been written using the word states. By the use of state, the significance of a government of estate possession was legally established. All of the North American states are Crown Templar possessions through their legal document, signed by their representation of both parties to the contract, known as the Constitution of the United States of America. All constitutional rights in America are simply those dictated by the Crown Temple and enforced by the Middle Templars, bar attorneys, through their franchise and corporate government entity, the federal United States government. When a state citizen attempts to invoke his constitutional, natural, or common law rights in chancery equity courts, he is told they don't apply. Why? Simply because a state citizen has no rights outside of the rule and codes of Crown law. Only a state citizen has natural and common law rights by the paramount authority of God's law. The people who comprise the citizenry of a state are recognized only within natural and common law as is already established by God's law. Only a state citizen can be a party to an action within a state court. A common state citizen cannot be recognized in that court because he doesn't legally exist in Crown Chancery courts. In order to be recognized in their state courts, the common man must be converted to that of a corporate or legal entity, a legal fiction. Now you know why they create such an entity using all capital letters within birth certificates issued by the state. They convert the common lawful man of God into a fictional legal entity subject to administration by state rules, orders and codes. There is no law within any rule or code. Of course, rules, codes, etc. do not apply to the lawful common man of the Lord of Lords, so the man with inherent godly law and rights must be converted into a legal person of fictional status, another legal term, in order for their legal, but completely unlawful state judiciary, chancery courts, to have authority over him. Chancery courts are tribunal courts where the decisions of justice are decided by 3 judges. This is a direct result of the Crown Temple having invoked their rule and code over all judicial courts. It is held to be a settled rule, that our courts cannot take notice of any title to land not derived from the state or colonial government, and duly verified by patent. -4 Johns. Rep. 163. Jackson v. Waters, 12 Johns. Rep. 365. SP. The Crown Temple was granted letters patent, see definition above, and charters, definition below, for all the land colonies of New England by the King of England, a sworn member of the Middle Temple, as the Queen is now. Since the people were giving the patent, charter corporations and colonial governors such a hard time, especially concerning crown taxation, a scheme was devised to allow the Americans to believe they were being granted independence. Remember, the Crown Templars represented both parties to the 1776 Declaration of Independence, and, as we are about to see, the latter 1787 U.S. Constitution. To have this declaration recognized by international treaty law, and in order to establish the new legal crown entity of the incorporated United States, Middle Templar King George III agreed to the Treaty of Paris on September 3, 1783, between the Crown of Great Britain and the said United States. The Crown of Great Britain legally was, then and now, the Crown Temple. This formally gave international recognition to the corporate United States, the new Crown Temple states, colonies. Most important is to know who the actual signatories to the Treaty of Paris were. Take particular note to the abbreviation ESQR. Following their names, see above definition for Esquire, as this legally signifies officers of the King's Courts, which we now know were Templar courts or Crown Courts. This is the same Crown Templar title given to Alexander Hamilton, see above. The Crown was represented in signature by David Hartley, ESQR, a Middle Templar of the King's Court. Representing the United States, a Crown franchise, by signature was John Adams, ESQR, Benjamin Franklin, ESQR, and John Jay, ESQR. The signatories for the United States were also Middle Templars of the King's Court through Bar Association membership. What is plainly written in history proves, once again, that the Crown Temple was representing both parties to the agreement. What a perfect and elaborate scam the people of North America had pulled on them. It becomes even more obvious when you read Article 5, which states in part, to provide for the restitution of all estates, rights, and properties which have been confiscated, belonging to real British subjects. The Crown colonies were granted to persons and corporations of the Crown Temple through letters patent and charters, and the North American colonial land was owned by the Crown. Now, here's a real catch-all in Article 4, it is agreed that creditors on either side shall meet with no lawful impediment to the recovery of the full value in sterling money of all bona fide debts heretofore contracted. Since the Crown and its Templars represented both the United States, as the debtors, and the Crown, as the creditors, then they became the creditor of the American people by owning all debts of the former colonies, now called the legal Crown states. This sounds too good to be true, but these are the facts. The words scam and hoodwinked can't begin to describe what had taken place. So then, what debts were owed to the Crown Temple and their banks as of 1883? In the contract between the King and the 13 United States of North America, signed at Versailles July 16, 1782, Article 1 states, "It is agreed and certified that the sums advanced by His Majesty to the Congress of the United States under the title of a loan, in the years 1778, 1779, 1780, 1781, and the present 1782, amount to the sum of 18 million of livres, money of France, according to the following 21 receipts of the above-mentioned underwritten Minister of Congress, given in virtue of his full powers, to wit, that amount equals about $18 million, plus interest, that Hamilton's U.S. Central Bank owed the Crown through Crown Bank loans in France. This was signed, on behalf of the United States, by an already familiar Middle Templar, Benjamin Franklin, Esquire. An additional $6 million, 6 million livres, was loaned to the United States at 5% interest by the same parties in a similar contract signed on February 25, 1783. The Crown bankers in the Netherlands and France were calling in their debts for payment by future generations of Americans. The fiscal agents of Mystery Babylon. Since its beginnings, the Temple Church at the City of London has been a Knight Templar secret society. It was built and established by the same Temple Knights who were given their rule and order by the Roman Pope. It's very important to know how the British royal crown was placed into the hands of the Knights Templars, and how the Crown Templars became the fiscal and military agents for the Pope of the Roman Church. This all becomes very clear through the concession of England to the Pope on May 15, 1213. The charter was sworn in fealty by England's King John to Pope Innocent and the Roman Church. It was witnessed before the Crown Templars, as King John stated upon sealing the same, I myself bearing witness in the house of the Knights Templars. Pay particular attention to the words being used that we have defined below, especially charter, fealty, demur, and concession. We wish it to be known to all of you, through this our charter, furnished with our seal, not induced by force or compelled by fear, but of our own good and spontaneous will and by the common counsel of our barons, do offer and freely concede to God and his holy apostles Peter and Paul, and to our mother the Holy Roman Church, and to our Lord Pope Innocent and to his Catholic successors, the whole kingdom of England and the whole kingdom Ireland, with all their rights and appurtenances, we perform and swear fealty for them to him our aforesaid Lord Pope Innocent, and his Catholic successors, and the Roman Church binding our successors and our heirs by our wife forever, in similar manner to perform fealty and show homage to him who shall be chief pontiff at that time, and to the Roman Church without demur. As a sign we will and establish perpetual obligation and concession from the proper and especial revenues of our aforesaid kingdoms the Roman Church shall receive yearly 1,000 marks sterling, saving to us and to our heirs our rights, liberties and regalia, all of which things, as they have been described above, we wish to have perpetually valid and firm, and we bind ourselves and our successors not to act counter to them. And if we or any one of our successors shall presume to attempt this, whoever he be, unless being duly warned he come to his kingdom, and this senses, be shall lose his right to the kingdom, and this charter of our obligation and concession shall always remain firm. Most who have commented on this charter only emphasize the payments due the Pope and the Roman Church. What should be emphasized is the fact that King John broke the terms of this charter by signing the Magna Carta on June 15, 1215. Remember, the penalty for breaking the 1213 agreement was the loss of the crown right to the kingdom to the Pope and his Roman Church. It says so quite plainly. To formally and lawfully take the crown from the royal monarchs of England by an act of declaration, on August 24, 1215, Pope Innocent III annulled the Magna Carta. Later in the year, he placed an interdict prohibition on the entire British Empire. From that time until today, the English monarchy and the entire British crown belong to the Pope. The following definitions are all taken from Webster's 1828 dictionary since the meanings have not been perverted for nearly 200 years. Fealty, n.l. fidelis. Fidelity to a lord, faithful adherence of a tenant or vassal to the superior of whom he holds his lands, loyalty. Under the feudal system of tenures, every vassal or tenant was bound to be true and faithful to his lord, and to defend him against all his enemies. This obligation was called his fidelity or fealty, and an oath of fealty was required to be taken by all tenants to their landlords. The tenant was called a liege man, the land, a liege fee, and the superior, liege lord. Fee, in English, is loan. This word, fee, inland, or an estate in trust, originated among the descendants of the northern conquerors of Italy, but it originated in the south of Europe. See feud. Primarily, a loan of land, an estate in trust, granted by a prince or lord, to be held by the grantee on condition of personal service, or other condition, and if the grantee or tenant failed to perform the conditions, the land reverted to the lord or donor, called the landlord, or lendlord, the lord of the loan. A fee then is any land or tenement held of a superior on certain conditions. It is synonymous with fief and feud. In the United States, an estate in fee or fee simple is what is called in English law an allodial estate, an estate held by a person in his own right and descendable to the heirs in general. Feud, n.l., fides, eng, loan. A fief, a fee, a right to lands or hereditaments held in trust, or on the terms of performing certain conditions, the right which a vassal or tenant has to the lands or other immovable thing of his lord, to use the same and take the profits thereof hereditarily, rendering to his superior such duties and services as belong to military tenure, and c. the property of the soil always remaining in the lord or superior. By swearing to the 1213 Charter in fealty, King John declared that the British English Crown and its possessions at that time, including all future possessions, estates, trusts, charters, letters patent, and land, were forever bound to the Pope and the Roman Church, the landlord. Some 500 years later, the New England colonies in America became a part of the Crown as a possession and trust named the United States. ATTORNING, PPR. Acknowledging a new lord, or transferring homage and fealty to the purchaser of an estate. Bar attorneys have been attorneying ever since they were founded at the Temple Church, by acknowledging that the Crown and he who holds the Crown is the new lord of the land. Charter, n. 1. A written instrument, executed with usual forms, given as evidence of a grant, contract, or whatever is done between man and man. In its more usual sense, it is the instrument of a grant conferring powers, rights and privileges, either from a king or other sovereign power, or from a private person, as a charter of exemption, that no person shall be impaneled on a jury, a charter of pardon, and c. The charters under which most of the colonies in America were settled, were given by the King of England, and incorporated certain persons, with powers to hold the lands granted, to establish a government, and make laws for their own regulation. These were called charter governments. By agreeing to the Magna Carta, King John had broken the agreement terms of his fealty with Rome and the Pope. The Pope and his Roman Church control the Crown Temple because his knights established it under his orders. He who controls the gold controls the world. The Crown Temple today. The workings of the Crown Temple in this day and age is more so obvious, yet somewhat hidden. The Crown Templars have many names and many symbols to signify their private and unholy temple. Take a close look at the alleged $1 private Federal Reserve System, a Crown banking franchise, debt note. Notice in the base of the pyramid the Roman date MDCCLXXVI, which is written in Roman numerals for the year 1776. The words Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum are Roman Latin for announcing the birth of the new order of the world. Go back to the definitions above and pay particular attention to the words capital, crown and temple. 1776 signifies the birth of the New World Order under the Crown Temple. That's when their American Crown colonies became the chartered government called the United States, thanks to the Declaration of Independence. Since that date, the United Nations, another legal Crown Temple by charter, rose up and refers to every nation as a state member. The Wizard of Oz equals the Crown Temple. This is not a mere child's story written by L. Frank Baum. What symbol does Oz stand for? Ounces? Gold? What is the yellow brick road? Bricks or ingot bars of gold? The character known as the straw man represents that fictitious all-caps legal fiction, a person, the federal U.S. government created with the same spelling as your Christian birth name. Remember what the straw man wanted from the Wizard of Oz? A brain. No legal fiction has a brain because they have no breath of life. What did he get in place of a brain? A certificate. A birth certificate for a new legal creation. He was proud of his new legal status, plus all the other legalisms he was granted. Now he becomes the true epitome of the brainless sack of straw who was given a certificate in place of a brain of common sense. What about the Tin Man? Does taxpayer identification number TIN mean anything to you? The poor Tin Man just stood there mindlessly doing his work until his body literally froze up and stopped functioning. He worked himself to death because he had no heart or soul. He's the heartless and emotionless creature robotically carrying out his daily task as if he was already dead. He's the ox pulling the plow and the mule toiling under the yoke. His masters keep him cold on the outside and heartless on the inside in order to control any emotions or heart he may get a hold of. The pitiful cowardly lion was always too frightened to stand up for himself. Of course, he was a bully and a big mouth when it came to picking on those smaller than he was. They act as if they have great courage, but they really have none at all. All roar with no teeth of authority to back them up. When push came to shove, the cowardly lion always buckled under and whimpered when anyone of any size or stature challenged him. He wanted courage from the Grand Wizard, so he was awarded a medal of official recognition. Now, regardless of how much of a coward he still was, his official status made him a bully with officially recognized authority. He's just like the attorneys who hide behind the middle courts of the temple bar. What about the trip through the field of poppies? They weren't real people, so drugs had no effect on them. The Wizard of Oz was written at the turn of the century, so how could the author have known America was going to be drugged? The Crown has been playing the drug cartel game for centuries. Just look up the history of Hong Kong and the Opium Wars. The Crown already had valuable experience conquering all of China with drugs, so why not the rest of the world? Who finally exposed the wizard for what he really was? Toto, the ugly, or cute, depending on your perspective, and somewhat annoying little dog. Toto means in total, altogether, Latin in toto. Notice how Toto was not scared of the great wizard's theatrics, yet he was so small in size compared to the wizard, no one seemed to notice him. The smoke, flames and hologram images were designed to frighten people into doing as the Great Wizard of Oz commanded. Toto simply went over, looked behind the curtain, the court, see the definition for curtain above, saw it was a scam, and started barking until others paid attention to him and came to see what all the barking was about. Just an ordinary person controlling the levers that created the illusions of the Great Wizard's power and authority. The veil hiding the corporate legal fiction and its false courts was removed. The wizard's game was up. It's too bad that people don't realize how loud a bark from a little dog is. How about your bark? Do you just remain silent and wait to be given whatever food and recognition, if any, your legal master gives you? Let's not forget those pesky flying monkeys. What a perfect mythical creature to symbolize the Bar Association attorneys who attack and control all the little people for the great crown wizard, the powerful and grand bankers of Oz, gold. What is it going to take to expose the wizard and tear down the court veil for what they really are? Each of us needs only a brain, a heart and soul, and courage. Then, and most importantly, we all need to learn how to work together. Only in toto, working together as one body of the King of Kings, can we ever be free or have the freedom given under God's law. Mystery Babylon revealed. There is no mystery behind the current abomination of Babylon for those who discern his truth, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Revelation chapter 17 verse 5. God has reserved his judgment for the great idolatress, Rome, the chief seat of all idolatry, that rules over many nations with whom the kings have committed to the worship of her idols. See Revelation chapter 17 verses 1-4. The Pope and his purported church, sitting on the temple throne at the Vatican, ruling the nations of the earth through the crown temple of ungodly deities, are the rule and order of Babylon, the crown of godlessness and the code of commerce. One may call the rule of the world today by many names: the New World Order, a Bush family favorite; the Third Way, spoken by Tony Blair and Bill Clinton; the Illuminati, Triad, Triangle, Trinity, Masonry, the United Nations, the EU, the US, or many dozens of other names. However, they all point to one origin and one beginning. We have traced this in history to the Crown Temple, the Temple Church circa 1200. Because the Pope created the Order of the Temple Knights, the Grand Wizards of Deception, and established their mighty Temple Church in the sovereign city of London, it is the Pope and his Roman capitals who control the world. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Revelation chapter 17 verse 4. This verse appears to be an accurate description of the Pope and his bishops for the past 1,700 years. He idolatries of commerce in the world, all the gold and silver, the iron and soft metals, the money and coins and riches of the world, all of these are under the control of the Crown Temple, the Roman king and his false church, the throne of Babylon, attended to by his Templar Knights, the wizards of abomination and idolatry. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman, mother of harlots, sitteth. Revelation chapter 17 verse 9. The only mention of 7 mountains within our present-day Bible is at Revelation chapter 17 verse 9, so it's no wonder this has been a mystery to the current body of Christ. The 1611 King James, who was a Crown Templar, Bible is not the entire canon of the early church, church in Latin ecclesia, in Greek ecclesia. This in itself is no mystery, as history records the existence and destruction of these early church writings, just as history has now proven their genuine authenticity with the appearance of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Coptic Library at Nag Hammadi in Egypt, among many other recent Greek-language discoveries within the past 100 years. The current Holy Bible quotes the Book of Enoch numerous times. By faith Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death, and was not found, because God had taken him, for before he was taken he had this testimony, that he pleased God. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 5. Now Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied about these men also, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Jude chapter 1 verses 14 to 15. The Book of Enoch was considered scripture by most early Christians. The earliest literature of the so-called Church Fathers is filled with references to this mysterious book. The 2nd century epistle of Barnabas makes much use of the Book of Enoch. 2nd and 3rd century Church Fathers, such as Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Origen and Clement of Alexandria, all make use of the Book of Enoch, Holy Scripture. The Ethiopic Church included the Book of Enoch to its official canon. It was widely known and read the first 3 centuries after Christ. However, this and many other books became discredited after the Roman Council of Laodicea. Being under ban of the Roman papal authorities, afterwards they gradually passed out of circulation. At about the time of the Protestant Reformation, there was a renewed interest in the Book of Enoch, which had long since been lost to the modern world. By the late 1400s, rumors began to spread that a copy of the long-lost Book of Enoch might still exist. During this time, many books arose claiming to be the lost book but were later found to be forgeries. The return of the Book of Enoch to the modern Western world is credited to the famous explorer James Bruce, who in 1773 returned from 6 years in Abyssinia with 3 Ethiopic copies of the lost book. In 1821, Richard Lawrence published the first English translation. The now famous R.H. Charles edition was first published by Oxford Press in 1912. In the following years, several portions of the Greek text also surfaced. Then, with the discovery of cave number 4 of the Dead Sea Scrolls, 7 fragmentary copies of the Aramaic text were discovered. Within the Book of Enoch is revealed one of the mysteries of Babylon concerning the 7 mountains she sits upon. Underlining has been added, chapter 52, 2. There mine eyes saw all the secret things of heaven that shall be, a mountain of iron, a mountain of copper, a mountain of silver, a mountain of gold, a mountain of soft metal, and a mountain of lead. 6. These 6 mountains which thine eyes have seen, the mountain of iron, the mountain of copper, the mountain of silver, the mountain of gold, the mountain of soft metal, and the mountain of lead. All these shall be in the presence of the elect one as wax, before the fire, like the water which streams down from above upon those mountains, and they shall become powerless before his feet. 7. It shall come to pass in those days that none shall be saved, either by gold or by silver, and none be able to escape. 8. There shall be no iron for war, nor shall one clothe oneself with a breastplate. Bronze shall be of no service, tin shall be of no service and shall not be esteemed, and lead shall not be desired. 9. All these things shall be denied and destroyed from the surface of the earth when the elect one shall appear before the face of the Lord of spirits. Chapter 24, 3. The 7th mountain was in the midst of these, and it excelled them in height, resembling the seat of a throne, and fragrant trees encircled the throne. Chapter 25, 3. And he answered saying, This high mountain which thou hast seen, whose summit is like the throne of God, is his throne, where the Holy Great One, the Lord of glory, the eternal King, will sit, when he shall come down to visit the earth with goodness. 4. As for this fragrant tree, no mortal is permitted to touch it until the great judgment when he shall take vengeance on all and bring everything to its consummation. 4 Vir. 5. It shall then be given to the righteous and holy. Its fruit shall be for food to the elect, it shall be transplanted to the holy place, to the temple of the Lord, the eternal King. 6. Then shall they rejoice with joy and be glad, and into the holy place shall they enter, its fragrance shall be in their bones, and they shall live a long life on earth, such as thy fathers lived. In their days shall no sorrow, or plague, or torment, or calamity touch them. The present wealth and power of all the world's gold, silver, tin, bronze, pearls, diamonds, gemstones, iron, and copper belonging to Babylon whore, and held in the treasuries of her crown Templar banks and deep stony vaults, will not be able to save them at the time of the Lord's judgment. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. Matthew chapter 23 verse 13. Where do we go from here? Now that their false temple has been exposed, how does this apply to the kingdom of heaven? To reach the end, you must know the beginning. For everything ordained of God, there is an imitation ordained of evil that looks like the genuine thing. There is the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil. The problem is, most believe they have the knowledge of God when what they really have is knowledge of world deceptions operating as gods. The only way to discern and begin to understand the kingdom of heaven is to seek the knowledge that comes only from God, not the knowledge of men who take their legal claim as earthly rulers and gods. The false crown temple and its grand wizard knights have led the world to believe that they are of the Lord God and hold the knowledge and keys to his kingdom. What they hold within their temples are the opposite. They claim to be the holy church, but which holy church? The real one or the false one? Are the Pope and his Roman Church the temple of God, or is this the unholy temple of Babylon sitting upon the 7 mountains? They use the same words, but alter them to show the true meaning they have applied. The state is not a state, a certificate is not a certification. The Roman Church is not the church, ecclesia. There is the crown of the Lord, and a crown of that which is not of the Lord. All imitations appear to be the genuine article, but they are fakes. Those who are truly seeking the genuine kingdom of God must allow the Lord to show them the discernment between the genuine and the imitation. Without this discernment by the Holy Spirit, all will remain fooled by the illusions of false deity emanating from the unholy spirits of the wizards. Neither shall they say, Lo here, or, Lo there. For behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Luke chapter 17 verse 21. Jesus said, If your leaders say to you, Look, the Father's kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, It is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the Father's kingdom is within you and it is outside you. Gospel of Thomas 3. Don't you know that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God lives in you? 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 16. Jesus said, Know what is in front of your face, and what is hidden from you will be disclosed to you. For there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed. And there is nothing buried that will not be raised. Gospel of Thomas 5.